Now, here's your host of Tampa Home Talk, Katrina Madewell.
Well, welcome back to hour number 2 of Tampa Home Talk. Thanks so much for sticking around. We hope you learned a little bit in the first hour, as did we. And our special guest rolling around for a 2-hour edition this show, Mr. Glen Lansky. He's the owner of Lansky Law Firm. I had that wrong the first time, right?
Lansky
and then
Law.
I think I got Lisa's name right. It's Cetrangolo. Is that
Close.
right?
Yep.
And Danielle Evance, one of our official show partners for Tampa Home Talk, and a rock star appraiser. So you guys, I'm sure, will cross paths at some point if you haven't already. And we were talking a lot about like the breakdown of the DNA and how all this divorce stuff happens, which none of us in the studio except for Danielle and the attorneys are familiar with. But what happens like when there's property involved? You know, what rules, what things should people consider if they're thinking about, you know, getting a divorce and there's a home involved?
Well, with the home will fall under equitable distribution. So the first thing we're going to look at is the value of the home. To get an idea, I mean, appraiser will hate me. We use Zillow to get
I
an
knew
idea.
you were going to say that.
Well, just to get an idea, we got, to see what it's the last sold for and things like that. We'll use
how
that
would
as
you
a
feel if I
basic.
told you the CEO of Zillow sold his home for 40% less than his estimate?
No, I don't use Zillow for purposes of the actual valuations, but to get an idea of what it might be worth. We'll look at Zillow, or we'll get a realtor to come in and do a market appraisal.
Yeah.
Our client. Eventually, in most cases, if there's a dispute on the value, if the parties agree, it really doesn't matter what it's worth. If we both say it's worth $300,000, then we're going to use $300,000.
Right.
You know, the realtor comes in and says, "Okay, I'm going to list it for $330 and try to get you $300." That's fine, or $329.9 or whatever you guys
Right.
do. So the bottom line is, the equity in the house is what matters, and that equity in the house is an asset. So if the house is sold, it's pretty easy. You each get half, or maybe one side gets more because the other side wants to keep his 401k on the other side. It's
So
a
it doesn't
balancing
matter
act.
who put what down. Somebody
It-
had the house
no.
before the
Now that
spouse
matters.
came along.
That matters.
If a party, it's
Just
a
seeing if you're paying
premarital
attention.
asset.
Okay.
If I owned a house 10 years before I got married and we move in there, that's my house, unless I put her name on it. Now, if I put her name on it, it's half hers the second I put her name on it. Terrible story. 65-year-old man marries a 35-year-old woman.
Of course.
She says, "I'm going to leave you if you don't put my name on your house."
He does.
It's a $750,000 house, free and clear. He puts her name on. She files for divorce 3 months later. She was entitled to half that house.
I saw that before where they were
And
they
it's
weren't
terrible.
even married, but this girl
It's
got
terrible.
this guy to put his name on it. It's just you can
So-
see gold digger all over.
So you can address it in a prenuptial agreement, but if it's premarital, it's going to stay premarital. But there's some arguments that if the wife or husband contributed to an increase in value, let's say with marital money, you improve the house. Now, we all know that as a realtor, you put a $40,000 pool and it's not going to make the house worth $40,000 more, right?
Right.
Might add $10,000 or $15,000 to the house.
10 is kind of like the magic number.
I know.
So in that situation, you can make an argument, hey, my efforts helped improve it and argue equity there. Florida doesn't really recognize the special equity. Like I put $50,000 down on the house. If I put $50,000 on the house of my premarital money and we buy it together and both our names go on it, that's
Here's the thing.
ours. It's
If
a
you're
gift.
married in the state of Florida, the other spouse has to sign to sell
Exactly.
it. Like, it doesn't matter whether they're on it or not.
Exactly.
They got to sign.
Yep.
Because Florida recognizes a marital interest in that home. whether
I
it's-
have a lot of clients that want to have the house appraised before they ever file for divorce.
It gives them an idea. I agree
It
with
gives
that.
them an idea, but it costs them a lot of money when the judge says, now I need one for the date of divorce.
Well, that
And they don't understand it.
and usually if you wait, both parties are going to have to equally pay for the appraisal.
Yeah.
So, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, do you find it very often where, or like you mentioned, so you have to, both parties have to sign even if they're not on the house. So
Yep.
is that the same way, with the divorce or anything else like that? So how often do you see it where, say, they were married when they bought the house, but only the husband's on there? And how does that affect things?
It doesn't matter how things are titled.
Okay.
Anything, cars, houses,
The pet
retirement
rabbit.
accounts, anything doesn't matter how they.
If you're married, it's both of you.
If you're married,
And that's when it was
if it's
acquired.
incurred, debt incurred or assets accrued, date of marriage forward, are marital assets or marital debts. If you file for divorce and I start accruing debt, that's going to be my debt. So post filing, it's not going to be split.
Don't start swiping
Right.
the card.
Don't start doing
Excellent
things. And we
point.
tell people not
It's
to
a
go
really
crazy
bad
on
idea.
that. So
Well, I didn't ask you this last hour. I probably should have before we roll too much down the appraisal rabbit hole. What happens if somebody moves out? Like, is that
Someone
a
can move out
factor?
of the marital home. A lot of times we run into the issue of someone will move out and then they'll say, well, I'm coming back home, and the other one changes the locks or says,
Yeah.
no, you can't come back home. They can't. That is their home too. And
Right.
until the divorce is finalized and everything's been done, they can break a window and get into that house.
Is
It's
that-
their-
we're not
We're not
recommending
saying
that.
to
But it
do
happens.
that,
They
but
can,
that's
yeah.
what
Oh, I
the
came
police-
home.
You're not
I
gonna
came
be
home
mad.
to not a
Okay.
piece of furniture in my house. It happened.
People
And I
say,
changed the locks.
You know, he or she came over to the house and came into the house, and he's not, or
can.
he or she's not
Yeah.
supposed
You only
to be in the
took
house.
his
And I say,
stuff.
well, you
It
know,
is what it is.
Is it
Sometimes-
frowned
It's
on
their
by the
house,
judges
too.
at all if
Well,
somebody moves
sometimes
out?
what we'll advise them in that situation is, hey, if you're living in the house and he's coming back at will or she's coming back at will and you're the only one occupying the master bedroom, put a lock, on your personal stuff, put that there, that
Yeah.
is something we'll advise them on. Can he really snap it? Probably, but we would have a better argument that.
Or we can try to get a temporary agreement for exclusive use and possession, but unless
Right.
you have that
It has to be
temporary
a written agreement.
right?
That's the
Unless
key.
you have
Yeah.
that, the house is both of theirs.
And if the divorce goes on for 5-6 years, they still own that house for 5-6 years.
So Danielle, you made some valid points with regards to the appraisal, and I'm sure you can all chime in with regards to how this works. Let's say you get in, they say, well, we don't know what it's worth. We can get a realtor opinion. We're going to have an appraiser actually come do the appraisal. They say, all right, the home is worth $300,000. Now they file. How long is that process? What, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, maybe
It could be
a year?
Depends on the court.
6 months, it could be a
So
year,
let's say
it could
it's
be
a
a year and
year
half.
later.
To go to trial, if everything is done, if you file and everything is done according, like all the financials are done on time, you go to mediation on time, you go there, you're probably still looking at, if you can't agree at mediation, if you can agree at mediation, you can get the case done in 3 to 6 months. If you can't agree at mediation, you're probably not going to get into court for a trial for almost a year. Minimum.
If not more
well,
than
that's
that.
that's the best case scenario.
That's best
Right.
case scenario.
That's
so
very
So when
fast.
does the value actually get? Because like
Date
in
of
this
filing.
market we've
date
been
the
in,
date that the actual date of filing is the date the house needs to be
so
appraised.
the date they go in, you guys file the motion with the courts that it's actually they're starting
Now,
the.
I have a question for the appraiser actually on that. So let's say a year later, I say to you, I want to know what the house was worth on the date of filing. Can you do
There's
that?
new cases, yes, and there's new cases that have been won, and now it's bringing us. It's actually changed the game for us. We now do an appraisal the date of filing and right the week before trial.
Okay.
And we bring both of them into court because there's so much time between the date of filing and the actual end of these these trials. Sometimes we're talking 8-10 years. I have a case right now it just got postponed again, and he's on his 8th year. They have a lot of investment properties that are taking in a lot of money for 8 years. It can't be discounted. That all has to be taken into the equation.
So what happens in that scenario? I mean, not 8 years, but let's say it's a year, right? And there's 2 or 3 properties involved. Let's say the value is $500,000 at the time of filing, but now it's time to actually liquidate those assets, and it's a year later, and now the value is $600,000 between 3 different properties. What happens to that extra $100,000?
Well, either they're both going to, as with any investment, it would be valued on the date of filing, and that investment went down. Both parties are going to share in that loss.
Yep.
Okay.
The same thing if I have a 401k that's worth $500,000, and the market fluctuates, and now at the date of filing, it's going to say you're entitled to 1/2 of the $500,000 plus or minus passive gains and losses.
How does that
So
work?
it's going to
being
work
that
the same
they
with a
could
real
be
estate
penalized,
property.
right? If they take money out of the retirement, how does that work?
Well, you're not. The standing
You're
order
not
says
supposed
you
to.
can't,
You can't.
but people
they
do.
wait to get it, or
Well,
It's
some
smart to
people will
get
do it anyway.
it's smart to get judgments on it. Like in my case, we actually had to. He's a government employee. We actually had to put. He tried to liquidate everything. He did liquidate everything. So the only thing that we were able to save was to put a judgment against his 401k.
Or a lot of retirement plans will require a spouse's signature if you want to take out a certain amount of money. But there is some case law out there that says if you need it to live on,
You can take
you
it out.
can take it out and without penalty, and
And-
it might not be reapportioned later because let's say the husband makes all the money, the wife has a $200,000 thing, he's giving her no money. She shouldn't be punished for having to live off of that because he's trying to freeze her out.
Yeah.
So she could maybe take $100,000, live off of it for 2 years, and not have that subject to equitable distribution because it was a necessity. That's the argument we would make for her. For
Right.
him, we would say, hey, He's my marital asset.
Yeah.
I want half.
All right, you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We've got another fun show lined up for you this hour. This hour is all about keep it or sell it, and this is the importance of an appraisal during a divorce. We'll be back right after the short break here for Tampa Home Talk. Our off-air number I haven't give out, 813-377-2775.
Good morning. Welcome back. This is Leo Kane with Adam Talley, the two microphone sharing hosts of the hour. On our next segment, I guarantee you, I know some of the lovely ladies and gentlemen out there are waiting for Adam's 2-minute tip of the week on insurance. That'll come the next segment. But we're here with our full house, and I'm very excited to ask questions about appraisals
And
during
shame
divorce.
on us for not giving out our off-air number in case our listeners want to actually catch up with our guest.
That is true.
And that number is 813-377-2775. You can call or text. If
The
you
word
text,
divorce?
Text appraisal. We'll know you're looking for Danielle. If you text divorce, we'll know you have a question for our attorneys. Maybe not necessarily divorce. Maybe just have a question.
Well, that'd be simple. You just text divorce and it's done.
Yeah. 813-377-2775. You can call or text, and that is our off-air number, 813-377-2775.
I got a good question for Danielle. I'll probably make her cringe because I kind of think I know the answer. Can each spouse order their own appraisal?
Absolutely, and they
But-
always should, unless they are wanting to split the fee and they're best friends. There are plenty of times that both parties come to me. They both pay half. They're very happy to do it together. It's the best way, but
What happens
definitely
if-
have it done
What
separate.
happens if the husband and wife each get their own appraisal and they're different? Because we all know not all appraisals are created equal.
They'll absolutely be different.
If the judge finds inconsistencies in the two appraisals, first off, they're going to determine which one is the better appraisal. The judge is going to review both, and he's going to determine which one is more confident, which one's, holds more water. And if the judge disagrees with both of them, the judge just orders his own.
Here's the thing I can tell you for sure about appraisals, because I've been in this space for
They come
a
in
few
pretty
minutes.
close to each other.
Well, usually they're close, but they're always going to be different. And the reason why is an appraisal is an opinion of value. Point blank. That's all it is.
It is. It's a
an
paid
opinion
opinion.
of value. So Danielle's opinion, may be different from Adam's opinion. If he was an appraiser, the valuation that you give on that pool could have a $5,000, $10,000 spread. It shouldn't be, but it could be, right?
Yeah.
You could give $15,000 for a pool. Another appraiser could give it 10.
And then there's that other appraiser that gives 75 and thinks that it's
and the
justifiable.
comps you feel are most like kind, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, it's about playing matchmaker. Like what?
It
home
is. We're
most
playing
like
match
this one?
pair all day long.
Well, to chime in real quick, because you mentioned the judge, a lot of times, if you're close, if it's $5,000 or $10,000,
They
us as
split it.
attorneys are going to say,
Right in the
let's
middle.
take the average.
Take the middle, yeah.
Because we're not going to go pay her to come and
makes
pay
sense,
another
yeah.
appraiser to come to court and spend $5,000 to argue over $5,000.
But if one is way off from the other, the
Then you
judge
have
is going to look at that appraiser and say, I know what you did. I've seen the judges crack down on appraisers because there's a vast difference between a private appraisal and an appraisal for lending. We basically do all of our appraisals the same. We just use a different form. And at the end of the day, if you can't get financing on it, is it really the value? Come on. Like,
Well,
you can go out there and
the value
privately
is-
appraise a house
the
for
value is what
anything
a
you
buyer's
want.
willing to pay,
A buyer's willing to pay. And
What a
that's
buyer's
how
willing to
we
pay.
do it. There are appraisers out there that it's just such a hypothetical pre-listing appraisal that just doesn't hold a lot of water.
Wasn't there recent laws that came out or something governing or your licensing where a lot of appraisers are now out of the business because of the times where the appraisals were just coming in for whatever the purchase price
We
was?
were never actually. We were investigated. All appraisers were investigated, and out of all of them in the entire country, 3 were sanctioned. And only 3 went to jail, and they were also agents. They didn't even go to jail for what they did as appraisers. They more so were in trouble as agents. Appraisers, we go to federal prison. They throw us in orange and see you later. There's no slap on the wrist for us. We are in the position to protect the public, and so there are plenty of appraisers out there doing wrong, but they don't stay in the industry for very long. They're not around for long.
Well, I think the threshold and the barrier to entry has gotten so high.
I should have been a dentist. I could have been a doctor. I could have been a lawyer. I could have had your job. It took Almost.
You can have
It took 6 years to get certified.
Good.
It took 10 years before I was making a living. I know that there's a lot of other professions that it's a lot easier and there's more money in it, but I love what I do and I'd never change it.
It's hard to break into that profession, and since the housing
is.
collapse, like I said, the barrier for entry extremely high. How many hours are required to actually
200
be
and
an appraiser?
205 hours just to become certified. 2 years of mentorship.
Right.
You have to have a
work
bachelor's degree in
under.
science. So you are in it for some serious school and about $10,000. And no job for 2 years while you're a trainee. You're not making a living.
How much extra is it to do the commercial appraising? Isn't that MAI or something?
Commercial appraising is it's an extra 2,500 hours.
That's all.
Just a few more, but yeah, it goes from 1,500 hours of mentorship to 2,500, and it's bigger and bigger the further you go. But then to be MAI or to be AI, that's just extra schooling that you're doing on your own, and you're just funneling the money out just to have those little letters after your name.
Danielle, what are some of the big things that you see? Like, I know you said sometimes they go in front of the judge. The judges are like, ew, no, it's not a good appraisal. See you later, throwing it out.
I've had it happen a lot.
What are you seeing? Like, what is the other?
For instance, you can tell when a homeowner steers an appraiser. You can read the report and you can see that they were just swayed to go to one side or the other. We have no vested interest in the outcome of the divorce. I don't care who's getting the house. I don't want to know who's getting the house. I don't want to know anything in between. I just don't need any of those facts because I'm a fact finder.
You just need to know about the home.
I just need to know about the home. And when the wife comes to me and says, I want it, I want the house, and in the back of my head, all I'm thinking is, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to maintain it? And when this house needs to be painted, you are paying double because your husband's not here to do it for you. When you have to mow the lawn, you're now paying a service because your husband's not here on the weekends. I come back to these houses 2 years later, and they are in such dilapidated condition that they can't even be sold. They are now quick sales, and these.
You mean short sales?
Short sales, yes, definitely. But
Fire
people start giving away their equity because they just stop thinking in the divorce situation. There's so many heated emotions. Common sense is thrown out the window for these people, and same with me. I mean, we had nothing to split. Nothing. We liquidated everything before we ever filed for divorce, and it took us 6 years to get a divorce. And then I didn't know that you could do this, but you can appeal a divorce. And my divorce was appealed. We had nothing to split. Nothing. Not one physical dollar. All we had was a 401k to split. That's it.
How can that be?
How can you appeal a divorce?
You can appeal.
You can appeal anything.
You can appeal a judge's if you go to a full trial. You have a motion hearing. You can appeal any ruling that you want, saying the judge misapplied fact or the law was misapplied. And it can stretch it out another 2 to 3 years. Yep,
and that's exactly what happened. It was a year and a half for me. I ended up having to hire 2 more attorneys because now my regular divorce attorney, the first question anybody should ask when they go to get a divorce and you're planning on going to trial, you should ask your attorney, do you do appeals? Because if you don't, you now got to hire another one to do the appeal.
We don't. We do not. And I would say about 95% of the active litigators
do not.
There are some very good appellate attorneys.
Well, why would you appeal a divorce? I don't know.
Because I won.
Yeah. Let's say I have a guy. A case that's up on appeal right now. It wasn't my case. A guy came to me to do the appeal, and I sent him away. But the other side was awarded $750,000 in attorney's fees. So he's appealing that order because they put a Liz Pennons on his $1 million house.
Yeah.
So that's one of those
that's
divorces
worth
that drag
appealing.
out.
Yeah. Oh, it was his 8-year divorce. I didn't do the divorce, but he came to me to help him afterwards, and I just
like, no thanks, I'm not walking.
Well,
into that
I just
one.
said, look,
there's no way to win it.
The referral, I'll refer you to an appellate attorney. You need to have them handle it because appellate attorneys, look, I'm a very good lawyer. I'm a crappy writer.
What
and that's all writing.
What does it mean, though? To say you're an appellate attorney, what does that mean exactly?
It's a very specific type of law, and they write these briefs where
it's a book.
Yeah, it's going to be
it summarizes the whole divorce into a very short-winded So, because now it goes before a panel of judges, and those panel of judges are going to rule on it. And if it goes to your side or not, it's like there's 7 of them.
And most of the
judging on
time, it goes to what's called the District Court of Appeal. We're at a general level of circuit court. Then it will give you appeals. Our circuit here at Tampa, Lakeland, St. Peter's, second DCA. So it'll go to up to that court. 95% of the time, they'll just rule on the brief itself, like the writing,
without even a hearing.
And if they don't, they may give you oral arguments to come in and argue before the DCA. If you lose at the DCA level, and it's not, you can appeal it up to the Supreme Court level. So it can go
It can
on.
keep going,
Attorney is
snowballing.
a writer.
In my case,
Basically, they're
you're
a writer,
possibly
possibly an arguer. For me, I could argue anything. Lisa could prep me for court and write down everything, and I'll just go and I argue. I don't like to write, but I can argue anything.
I write for him.
She writes
There you
for me,
go.
and then I go in and argue it. She writes for me what I want to write.
For
But,
every yang, there's a yang,
but
right?
she's right. An appeal can go on forever. They can appeal like the real estate ruling. It could tie up the house for 5, 6
I
years.
negotiated to get out of it, and I went smart, and I said, this is what I won, this is what I'm willing to take, let's play, and let's end this.
Because you're smart. You're doing a cost-benefit analysis.
Yep.
I'm going to have to pay an attorney $25,000, or I
Exactly.
can just do it this.
Yep.
I can take $12,000.
And I was willing to walk away from everything I won, just to have the divorce.
All right, you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. Our offer number is 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. We will be back right after this break. We're going to talk about how does a home buyout actually work in a divorce, and what happens when one party's staying and the other one isn't. We'll be back right after.
Tampa Home Talk. This is Adam Talley with Talley Insurance for your 2-minute tip of the week. And with hurricane season in full bloom, we saw all the flooding happening in New Orleans. I just want to remind
Did you see
people.
my picture that I posted? We flew right
No,
by
I
the
did
storm.
not.
You didn't
Oh
see
my
it on
goodness,
Facebook?
no.
I have to show it to you.
Okay.
You
Well,
can see the circle of the storm.
just a reminder for people, if you are not in a mandatory flood zone and you're not buying a house, there's a 30-day waiting period on flood insurance. So if you're curious or you think it might happen to you, now's a good time to purchase because the bad storms usually come right around September. So now's the time to start shopping. And they're very affordable, under $500.
And if there's a storm out there too, it's not you can't exactly change insurance or anything like that too. So if you know your policy's coming up,
Good time for a review.
reach out, get a review, be planned and prepared for that.
Absolutely.
Our off-air number, if you want to reach Adam, 813-377-2775. If you're not in a flood zone, it's really cheap to get flood insurance.
Yeah, under $500, and we can do it as an endorsement on some policies for $100.
And it's 813-377-2775. I had never seen that till recently, Adam. That was so cool.
Yeah,
that,
and that was a
writer
great deal.
endorsement.
Oh my goodness, and it gives you better coverage too.
Can I ask Adam a question?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Since
Fire
I'm here.
away.
Sinkholes.
What
Tell me
about
about sinkhole coverage in a policy, or is there no such thing anymore?
So every standard homeowner's policy in the state automatically includes catastrophic ground cover collapse. Now there's a very, very specific, you being a lawyer, I'm going to have to go into legal terms here. There's a very, very specific
not going to legal
definitions
terms.
on the state CFO website. So if you want to actually look at that, Leo might want to chime in on that.
Yeah, there's no sinkhole coverage, but there is something called catastrophic ground collapse.
Right.
So if your home is actively collapsing into the ground, you're covered.
Right.
Actively.
I like to say it's
And there's 5 definitions, and
Yeah.
I can spend a whole hour explaining the 5 definitions on what that means. But yes.
generally
that.
generally ground movement causes the home to be deemed unlivable is
Yes.
is the general way I'd describe it. But like you said, there are very specific definitions. So that's automatically included. All the carriers we have, most of them, they offer sinkhole. However, getting sinkhole is so difficult to do that, we don't really have any policies that have it anymore because it's a split inspection between cost-wise for the sinkhole inspector to go out there. In my experience, they're writing down everything. There's a crack in the sidewalk. They're writing it down. And those underwriters are looking for any reason not to add it. Then if they do add it, that means there's probably likelihood isn't very good, but they're going to charge you $300 to $400 a year. You have a 10% sinkhole deductible. You're in a $300,000 house. That's $30,000 out of pocket. So now you're paying all this money. It almost is the cost worth it at that point. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes,
or
it
not.
did. It's perfect.
Absolutely, and we're gonna dive back into the.
Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah, I don't know what Leo was gonna say here.
She's pointing. Yeah. So how?
Give me that.
I'll give you back the headphone.
Oh, the good headphone shuffle today. We're gonna dive back into should you keep it or sell it?
Yeah. So
What you got, Leo?
I don't know. What if one person decides to stay in the house?
Look, if the person's staying in the house, it's all about whose name is on that mortgage, because the person that's not in the house now has their mortgage on a house they don't live in. This needs to be taken care of before you even decide to get the divorce. Find the way to get off the mortgage. Start your life over. If the wife wants to stay in the house, if that's what she wants, let her have it, but make sure that she can get her name on that mortgage and refinance it. Do what you can do to make the situation in the future easier, not harder. And refinancing the house together before or after doesn't really matter. Getting somebody's name off that house has to happen. Two people have to go buy and put their names on separate mortgages in the future.
It can create havoc if you're trying to buy again in the future, right? Because the underwriting, the lender's going to ask
I
a
have
lot
plenty of
questions.
husbands that will never own a house ever again because their wife is living in their mortgage.
Well, I have a question for you, and this is probably more directed to you guys, but it kind of ties right in. What kind of credit hit do you see people take when they're getting a divorce? Because
150 points.
I see it on the
overnight gone.
I see it on the insurance side when we're running like an insurance score, which kind of factors in that a little bit. So I see that effect on it. But
I think
what do you
what
see?
happens in a lot of situations is obviously the highly wealthy people can pay things, but things don't get paid. You got to choose what you're going to pay. So if you miss payments on credit cards, your credit's going to get hit. Yeah. If they're joint credit cards, both your credits are going to get hit. You miss a house payment, which happens very often because
you're making that lawyer payment before you're making that mortgage payment. I promise you.
And one of the things that you have to understand is also child support. Okay, when child support gets ordered, it's not based on whether you can afford it or not. It's based on your income, gross income, your net income, and those things that Lisa talked about previously. And a guy's like, okay, it's $1,000 a month. Well, I can't afford that. Well, okay, you got to pay that $1,000 before you make your mortgage payment because you can be thrown in jail for not paying child support. You can't be thrown in jail for not paying your mortgage payment. You might lose your house eventually,
so tell me,
and your credit's going to get hit, but you're not going to go to jail.
How does that work? That's it, because all of a sudden people have what? 500, 1,000, whatever that child support payment is. Now they've got to change everything.
People want to get a divorce, but don't want to change their lifestyle.
And that's where the old saying, cheaper to keep her or cheaper to keep him, come into play.
It's cheaper to keep her.
You better
Trust
really
me.
figure it out. And Lisa, I mean, you've seen it a lot with the people not being able to pay, and then their credit does get hit big. It might get hit 100 points, might get hit 200 points.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it'll get hit just on the menial stuff, just on the small stuff. You miss a credit card payment. You miss. I had the electricity. Court ordered for him to pay the electricity. He loved to get it shut off.
And that hits your
He
credit.
would pay it. He would pay it 3 days after it got shut off. After it was a game. My car payment. It was in my name and his name. He physically paid it 31 days late for years just to physically destroy my credit.
Because we know a lot. I mean, I've been around since before credit scoring existed. We used to have to literally rate the credit A, B, C, D. Now it's all algorithms and scores, which comes into insurance. But literally, if you miss a mortgage payment, your score can tank 100 points.
Yeah.
And so we tell people the only way to fix that and rebound from that, if you're counting on credit at all, is to stop the bleeding. So if you stop the bleeding, what does that mean? You've got to get rid of all of these joint assets, liabilities, whatever they are. Figure it out as quick as possible. Sell whatever you have to sell to get rid of it and move on. If that's truly your desire, right? Just do it.
Yeah.
Don't mess around. Don't do it. So how does the judge actually decide who's going to get the house in a divorce? What if they're fighting over that?
It's who can afford it.
Well, in most
end of the
situations, it's either. Go ahead, Lisa. Take that one.
Well, there's going to be one of two things happen. Either they're going to agree to split the equity in the house and someone's going to buy them out. And if both of them want the house, a lot of times the judges will just say the house is going to be sold and proceeds are going to be split.
And nobody gets the house.
Right.
And that happens. And there's also another thing that happens sometimes is we've had cases where mom or dad, the one who gets the children the majority of the time, or let's say one of them moves out of state or something and the children's staying, we've seen it where parties can agree that the mother will live with the children in the house until the youngest child graduates high school.
Yep.
So and then it'll be sold and equity will be split at that point.
So what about the valuation at that time?
So one of the things that'll come into play, let's say mom lives in the house and she pays the mortgage for the next 8 years, that she's solely responsible for the mortgage. She'll get what's called Kelly credits, which means she'll get the benefit of what the mortgage has been decreased, not the payment. So let's say she pays $1,500 a month and the mortgage goes down $500 a month. She'll get 12 months a year at 500 times the 8 years. The husband will probably, the guy who doesn't live there, or the wife, whoever doesn't live there, will still get the market increase because he's also can never, like you said, can never buy a house now. But the judges have ordered that because this is what's in the best interest of the children. The children are 12 and 13. They've only lived in one house their whole life. They've only gone to one school. All their friends live in the neighborhood. All these factors you need to consider, and dad has the money to go live somewhere else. They may do that.
And mom can't ever mortgage without the job and the income.
And she may never be able to
and
mortgage.
may never be able to.
Because she's not going to qualify. She can afford the $1,500, but she's not going to qualify to get into her own
just
name.
alimony.
So that is more rare, but I like it in some situations because guess who's not getting affected?
The kids.
Yeah.
That's when it's a positive situation, and when the kids aren't uprooted out of their school district. And like in the case where the wife really was a stay-at-home mom and a caretaker, when she gets to fulfill that role, I disagree with it ending at 18. I think that it should end closer to 22, 24, because I'm supporting my college-age kid through college.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You don't know where they're going to go to college.
You don't.
I mean, I
You
think
have
when
no
it's
clue.
18, all of
And that
this
brings
change.
up a very interesting situation that comes up a lot. Your responsibility
Ends
for
at
your
18.
child ends on the day they turn
That's right.
18 or the day they graduate from high school, whichever is latter.
Really?
Okay?
Yes.
So
As long as they graduate high school by 19.
So even if you agree to pay for college and all that stuff, it's not
they
enforceable
don't
by the
have
courts
to.
because there's no requirement for you to do so.
Yes.
Now, it gets tricky when you're saying, hey, we're putting money into our 529s or we're putting money into a prepaid
'Cause there's a paper
child.
trail.
So people can agree that, hey, husband or wife is going to contribute $200 a month into the prepaid college or into the 529s. And that probably can be enforced, but stuff you agree to after the children turn 18, like a mother or a father will come in and say, hey, my 20-year-old lives at home. I pay all his bills. I want credit for that. No, you don't
20.
get credit.
He's 20.
Yes, he's your son, and yes, you can pay those, but don't think that you can get credit that that's part of your life expenses or living expenses that your ex has to pay for.
Yeah,
No,
'cause
that's
now
your choice.
he's 21 and he's met his girlfriend and
That's your choice. And then his girlfriend moves in, and then they have a baby, and that now you got a whole other family living there. Oh, I'm supporting them, but that's not fair.
What's one of the most challenging things that you guys have seen? Just kind of like, what's the first thing that snaps in your head? Just tell me the scenario, the story, of course, no names. And just tell me, what does that look like? And what's the one thing you could tell that family in hindsight?
I don't know. Can you think?
Surely there's I know you've worked with you've been doing this for how long?
Well, me, I'm going on 25.
Going
So
on
in
4.
25
1903,
years,
26
you've got
years.
that one story, you've got that scenario where this family or this person just pops in your head. And maybe they didn't take your advice on something. And you
Well,
said,
there's
hey,
plenty of
can
people
you-
that didn't take my advice. Well, the stories that pop into your head are, and we usually, if someone's not going to listen to us and they insist on doing it, and anyway, we usually make them sign an acknowledgement of legal advice. Hey, this is what we advised you.
And you didn't listen.
And this is what you're going to do. We don't advise it, but we understand that you want us to prepare the paperwork this way. Acknowledgement that you received the advice and decided not to follow it. I mean, are you asking
So
about a funny story?
that
or
I'll tell you what,
stories
I'll
that
get-
pop
we're
in my head
rolling
are
up
ones
on
that
it.
really touch your heart.
So exactly, and we're rolling up on a break, so I'll give you a minute to think about that and just think about what story comes to mind. And what's that one story that you saw as an attorney that you could share with the person listening that we wouldn't know unless we were in that particular scenario? And Danielle, I know you have plenty of appraiser stories as well, and we'll talk about that again. So one story, and what's one of your biggest challenges as an attorney and as an appraiser when you're dealing with this space, husband and wife split, divorce type scenario. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775. You can call or text us at 813-377-2775. We'll be back right after this break, so stick around.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. This is Leo Kane with Barrel Engineering and Inspection asking the tough questions. And now we've talked a lot about the children. We've talked a lot about the house. We've talked a lot about people getting divorced on good and bad terms. What about the pets? What about the dogs? I want to know about the dogs and chickens.
Well, that'll
chickens stay with the house, but let's go with the dogs.
That'll run us into a funny story I have. So pets are, they're difficult to value, obviously, money-wise, but in most situations, pets will be a subject of argument. Now, in some situations, it's like, I don't want them. I can't have them at my new apartment. They're too big. And the mom and the wife or husband doesn't want them, so both sides don't want them. So then that creates a situation.
That's not a funny story.
Sometimes
but the
people
story
try
I'm going to tell you, share
and
custody
it's
of
chattel, so it's a piece of property. So they don't do custody arrangements with animals. So
and we do live out in Lithia, and our office is in Lithia, and you deal with farm animals a lot, llamas, but they usually stay with the house, like you said. So. Funny story, years and years and years ago, go through a very contentious divorce. We finally settle everything except for one issue, the dog. This divorce was probably a $200,000 divorce. I think it was a little Shih Tzu. It was about 4 years old.
You can't say that on the radio.
Shih Tzu. Did I say that wrong? Shih Tzu? Shih Tzu?
You got it right.
This guy's messing with me. I never cuss, right? Staff? Never cuss. All right. So we wind up going through like a 3-day trial. My client probably spent $25,000 to $50,000 extra.
Does the dog testify?
The dog did not testify, but dog trainers testified, dog obedience school people testified, neighbors testified. We had expert witness on attachment syndrome with pets and how it could affect people negatively, emotionally, and cause problems. So we go through a whole 3-day trial. I forget the county. And we won. We got the dog for my client. And I was convinced he loved this little dog. Walk outside. He walks right up to his ex-wife, and he says, "You can have the damn dog. I just wanted to show you I was still in control." Which I just, my face just dropped. I looked over at him. I was going to say what I was going to say, but I don't cuss. No, It was disappointing because as a lawyer, the last thing you want to be doing is needlessly litigating something like that. I believed my client. I believed he genuinely loved this dog, and I was willing to fight for him. But to have that, it was like a slap in the face. And
at least he didn't put the dog down.
No, he didn't put the dog
Thank
down.
God
He gave the dog back.
Thank God he did.
For $25,000, you can buy a lot of new Shih Tzus.
This guy didn't really care about money.
You can open a business breeding Shih Tzus for that.
He didn't really care about the money. He cared about showing it was a control thing, and that could.
Hence the divorce, right?
Yeah.
That could be an issue in all divorces,
So the dog is considered property.
The dog would be a piece of property in this situation, yes. It's an asset.
Do you have people that try and share pets?
I've had a few cases. Lisa, have you had one?
I don't, but I know some people that do, and they actually do a week on, week off arrangement with the animal, and it kind of works out for them. They live close to each other, so if one's going out of town, they, just bring the dog over to the other person's house. But I haven't dealt with that in a divorce because it's property, so it's one side's getting it or another.
I've written into an agreement that the one side gets the dog, but if that person cannot
Right.
care for the dog in the future, that the right of first refusal to have that dog would go back to the other side. So it's happened, but I mean, dogs are, there's one judge that will remain nameless that was in the family law division that, he had dogs and he loved dogs and he trained dogs. And if dogs were part of your case, you better be prepared to argue because they were like children to him. So
know thy judge, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we, and that's very important.
Yes.
You have to know your judge and you have to know what
Every
their
judge is
patterns
different.
of rulings are so you can advise your client properly. Hey, we can't go into this court and ask for anything other than 50-50 unless we got a reason for custody of your children.
How they decide
because they're a 50-50 judge unless you show them something, not just that you don't want
there's
it.
some judges that aren't for 50-50 and
They
think it's not in the
specifically
best
think
interest
it's
of the
bad.
kids.
Yeah.
So you go into them knowing that.
That's the every other weekend judge?
Could be.
Yes.
Polk County is not a 50-50
Polk County
area.
is not a big 50-50.
Pasco is not a 50-50 area very
Pasco's
often.
not.
I would say
all.
Hillsborough
Hillsborough really,
is pretty close
yeah.
with most judges.
Well, if you want to save your dog in a divorce, what's the number they should text?
It's 813-377-2775.
What do you text? Dog divorce?
813-377-2775. Seriously.
And if you need that doghouse appraised,
Oh, sure. I mean, what does a doghouse do?
I have
for an
appraised several doghouses.
Have
If
you?
it's attached, it is valued.
I know
And
what
yes,
your,
I have done plenty of custom, more elaborate than my 1-bedroom apartment.
That's
too.
awesome.
For a dog?
For a dog.
What's your,
Air conditioned and everything.
What's your biggest challenge as an appraiser?
My biggest challenge as an appraiser
Is the dog divorce?
I got you guys started all day now.
it really is that people's expectations that with Zillow, they look at Zillow and they know that Zillow is wrong. Even in these cookie cutter developments, if you don't have a pool, Zillow is way off, because the one thing that Zillow doesn't see is the pool. It can't tell the difference between a house with a pool and a house without a pool, just like it can't tell the difference between acreage and a postage stamp lot. It's an algorithm. It is not an appraisal, and it won't give you the right indication of market value. And it's just a baseline.
Yet they would love to be able to replace humans with.
They're gonna keep trying, but as long as I'm still here, I'm not going for that.
That's all right. Zillow's trying to replace us as agents too, but we know.
I know, right?
Zillow can't replace me.
Good luck getting into that situation with with the messy divorce, and you got to get this figured out and get everybody on board.
It's so much fun, though. It keeps us young.
Well, I mean, you got emotions tied to a lot of this stuff, right? Anytime somebody sells a home,
A lot
buys
of
their
emotions.
home, there's a lot of emotion attached.
Imagine
to that.
how much somebody loves their home, and then you got two people that are fighting over that same home, and one is fighting for money and one is fighting for the actual home, like, because they're attached to the home. So it can get really messy. As appraisers, we have no vested interest, so we have to stay completely out of the middle of it. And most times in the divorce situation, we actually ask everybody to leave the home and let us appraise it without them even there. Leave the door unlocked for me. I don't want to hear it.
And it makes sense, right? Like, it's as a real estate agent, we want to make sure when I meet people like you in the property, you guys have all the information
Speak
you
up.
need.
Yep.
What are some of the improvements that have been made? What are some of the things that are,
With a divorce
that
situation,
change?
we have to verify that information from both parties. And if one says, nope, the roof is 20 years old, and the other says the roof is 10 years old, I go straight to the county, pull the permit, and use the county. I use neither one of them, because in a divorce situation, they're not facts. There's no longer facts coming from the homeowner. It's now they're just giving you whatever they can come up with, and you can't really believe it.
And challenge. Did we talk about that? Did you guys share that real quick? What's your
challenge?
biggest challenge as a divorce attorney?
Lisa, you can go first.
gotta be
Biggest
the
challenge is
kids.
really sometimes just not getting emotionally involved, because you feel bad for people
Detached.
sometimes, and you really want to help them, and sometimes the law might not be on their side. So you just do the best you can, and you advise them of the law and get them what their best case scenario is.
How about you, Glenn? What's your biggest challenge?
Sleeping at night, because I have 200 cases rolling through my head.
Yeah.
And because
to
I
shut
take
it
these
off.
cases personally into heart, I worry about children. I worry about the moms. I worry about the dads. And I want them to be at peace. And unfortunately, I can't be a miracle worker.
Yeah.
I can only do what I can do. But my challenge is sleeping at night.
Glenn, Lisa, Danielle, thank you guys for being our guests. It's been an honor to have you the last couple of hours. Remember, this is Tampa Home Talk. Love where you live. We're going to fix it. Welcome home.